Learning to walk after you haven't walked for 3 months is funny. What you kind of just take for granted so often in life, and now learning it all over again. So anyway, wonderful time here. We're really enjoying it. And how many of you are at the hotel? It's a bunch of, it's kind of, it's interesting in the sense that life, when just our joy, one of the things like we were looking at last night, that the importance of being filled with the Spirit, because that's where you get your joy from. And so often the Lord has this incredible way of putting us in situations where if we were expecting joy from something and then it doesn't happen, now what do I do? What happens to me when an expectation that I have for joy or gratitude or anything, or submission, to it, and what do I do with it? And that's Gene does so unbelievably well with all of this. I'm one that my nature is so often not quite that way, but I'm learning to do it better, I think, all the time through life. But here we get in the hotel, and it's a nice hotel. I've stayed in many, many La Quintas. They're good hotels. I'm one of these guys, all I care about, frankly, myself, is a bed. If you can sleep well in it, travel so much, that's it to me. I'm not in the hotel very much anyway. But anyway, so we're in this hotel. And, the heater, the motor in it has quite a little rattle. Oh, well, so it's a steady rattle, so I'll sleep probably, because just like you're around traffic sometime or whatever. So anyway, so we go to bed, and then I think it was 2:37, and the alarm goes off. I guess I find out that there was a party there and somebody kind of pulled the thing or something. And then it kind of doze off a little bit, and then it goes off a second time. And then you don't go back to sleep. And then... So Jean, she gets coffee about 6, and okay, let's get some coffee. Well, she had already, coffee maker didn't work. She knew it didn't work, but so she just went in and got hot water out of the thing and made herself lukewarm coffee. And with the little things she has, that we carry little Starbucks things you could pour in, so in case that happens. So she gets her cup of coffee. She's fine with that. I go, try to get coffee, can't get coffee, but she told me what she did, so I tried it, and to me it wasn't hot enough, so all right, forget that, I'll go downstairs with it. But then, no, wait, we got a microwave. I'll just stick it in the microwave, and that'll heat it up. Well, then, of course, not only coffee doesn't work, microwave doesn't work as well. And what in the world is kind of going on here? And so then when I go downstairs, get some coffee, and often I usually will do that first anyway, and bring back, some eggs or whatever else there is. We go down there, and there's no coffee, and there's no bacon or eggs, and which they advertise for, and all of this. Well, I'll get some toast. Toaster doesn't work, and so everything. You just look at all of this, and and decide, well, where are you getting your joy from? Well, frankly, at 6 in the morning, I get mine from coffee, just to be quite honest. Every day, Gene can tell you this. Every day, we get up, we have this routine, I get coffee, and I don't really want to talk much until I get my coffee. And then when I get my coffee, I have devotion. So Gene, she says, how are you? And I say, I don't know yet. Give me my coffee and give me Jesus and we'll talk. Sort of a thing. I got to get things cranking in order to get everything in full gear. But seems like when God created man, He created women. I don't know if it's a sense of humor God has or what it is, but He made us so different. And you don't have to be married very long till you realize on how different the difference between a man and a woman. And not maybe they all aren't this way, but I think most kind of are. And a man is somebody that when his wife says, "Never mind, I'll do it myself," well, he lets her. And but a woman is somebody that when she says, "Never mind, I'll do it myself," and he lets her, she gets mad. But a man is somebody that when the woman says, "Never mind, I'll do it myself," and he lets her, and she gets mad, then he says, "Well, now what did I do?" And a woman is somebody that when she said, "Never mind, I'll do it myself," and he lets her, and she gets mad, and he says, "Now what I do?" She will say, "Well, if you don't know, I'm not going to tell you." And then he expects these two people to be happy together. Well, they're just on totally different frequencies trying to figure out each other. And this is, God created us so different so that we would need a third party, that we would need an intercessor. We would need an advocate, not only between us and God, but between us and one another. Somebody there that helps us in our journey. A second factor to me that is so important, I think, to understand is that God did not make us for marriage. That's not why he fundamentally created us. God made us for himself. And the first goal in life is God himself. And when God created a mate for us, he created a helpmate. Not a destination, but a helpmate to the ultimate destination. And I think that when you're focusing on your marriage or your kids or your family, you get things out of focus. You can't focus. You can't see it right. But when there's two people that were helping each other in the journey to know the Lord better and to serve the Lord better and to walk with the Lord and to share his life, when we love him first, we've got more love for each other than we know what to do with. When we're trying to love each other, we're struggling. And, when we realize, well, we're not doing it, okay, I got to try harder or something. No, it's not trying harder, it's letting him have his right place. I hope that's what we kind of got a little bit last night. Now we want to look at the marriage itself in Ephesians 5:22. And my favorite verse, actually, in the whole Bible, there, it's the first one that a lot of men memorize, quite well, that at least I sure did. And but here, when the Lord looks at us and he looks in marriage, he says, now, wife, submit yourself unto your husband as unto the Lord. And we hadn't been married very long. Then we had a disagreement about something. And we kind of went back and forth on it a little bit. And then finally, when we weren't going to agree, I just, okay, I didn't want to have to use this on you. But it was the last resort, so I quote to her. I just said to her, wives, submit yourself unto your own husband as unto the Lord. She turns to me and she says, well, I will start submitting to you when you start acting like him. And I said, it didn't say that. That's not what it said. But in 57 years, I have never used that verse again. Because that is a suggestion somewhat of how, not quite an accurate translation of it. But the point of it is that hopefully today, now as we do talk about marriage, we're talking here about a couple that we don't start with marriage. We start with, first of all, our relationship with the Lord. I don't believe we'll ever go deeper with one another than we are with him. He is the determining factor on how deep we are with one another. The stronger, the deeper my life and my walk with him, the greater the resources I will have from him to go greater places in my marriage and to enjoy it much better. And here, when we're looking at the scriptures, we're not just looking at some helpful hints there that help the marriage get better, or little insights, beneficial insights, try this or something to put a new spark in your marriage and a new focus. No, we're hopefully here we realize that the Bible is a supernatural book. It's supernatural in the sense that it is an instruction book into the supernatural world that the natural person begins to venture into. And it doesn't tell us to do things we will naturally do. It doesn't tell you inhale, exhale. No, you'll do that. It doesn't tell you eat, sleep. It doesn't. We will figure all that out without God. We'll just instinctively have that. It tells us things there that we need God for, and that God is to be a central aspect of it. It's a supernatural book. And here, as we now, hopefully, we got two people this morning. Let's pick it up in the sense of, okay, we got two people that are filled with the Spirit. That they know a great sense of joy. They found their joy in the Lord. They found their thankfulness in the Lord and submission into the Lord. They now come together, finding, first of all, he's where we got that from. Now, what do we do with it? And what is our job? And then he gives two instructions here that are impossible. I think we need to realize that what he is about to say here, they are humanly impossible to do. And that is, he's going to tell a wife to submit and a husband to love. And there's something there that because I think most wives, well, I submit to my husband. And I think most of you say, well, I love my wife. But that's not what he says. There's more to it. He says, wives, submit yourself unto your own husband as unto the Lord. And he said, what do you mean as unto the Lord? As if how you would submit to him. And you know, it doesn't take a long time for a woman to realize she didn't marry the Lord. Maybe some of them think they did. I've actually had people go through premarital counseling. You sit there and say, now are you prepared to submit to him? Oh, yes. He's wonderful. He's God's gift to me. Well, you may have some times where you struggle with submitting to, no, well, I already know. It's going to be, you just kind of, okay, you'll figure it out. We have homes for girls like you. You're going to end up in one if that's how you think. But he says, wives, submit as you were submitting to him. And you realize, but he's not the Lord, precisely. He's going to turn to a husband. He says, husbands, you love your wife. And he says, I love her. Do you love her as Christ of the church? Well, that's impossible. Nobody could love any human being the way Christ loved the church. Who gave himself for it, died on the cross for it, ever lives to make intercession, presents us faultless, no inconsistency, no shadow of turning in him. And God says, precisely. In other words, you cannot do these things without God. And a wife submitting. And so here we're going to look first. Paul writes down first, wife submitting. Now, I think a lot of wives would think, well, why can't we do the husband first? It's so easy if you kind of get his life together for me then to submit to him. But rather than that, I think we'll see here, one of the great keys, he says, right, start there with the wife and dealing with that, with it. And here is now he gets into not so much the spiritual roles of our relationship with the Holy Spirit, finding our joy in him, our gratitude in him, our thankfulness in him, and submission to him. Now we're coming together. And he says, now as a team, you're going to go through life. You're going to share your life. You're going to have a family. You're going to have children. And now you're on a team together in life. And here it's like one is there, he's the quarterback, and somebody else is an end or a halfback or something else. But when you get in the huddle, and now a play is being called, he says, wives, you submit your husband. Now this is a functional role. It's an operational role in the sense it has nothing to do essentially with spirituality or importance. It has to do with structure. It has to do with order. 1 Corinthians 11:3 says, but I would have you to know that the head of every man is Christ, the head of woman is man, and the head of man and the head of Christ is God. Here he said, even when Jesus came here and he took a human flesh upon himself, he was submissive to his Father. And and man is to be submissive to Christ, and a woman is to be submissive to man, to her husband. And it's interesting, that in the garden when Adam and Eve sinned, the way that he did, the way that God dealt with it, man came from the dust of the earth, came from dirt, came from the soil. God reached down and he reached up and he fashioned a man. When man sinned, God sent man back to the dirt. He says, now you're going to labor. The earth is going to bring forth thorns and thistles. You're going to have feasts and famines. You're going to go through the highs and the lows and the seasons and the injustices there of the earth, the inconsistencies there in terms of, you're going to grind out a living out of that dirt. And with all of its thorns, all of its thistles, all of its exhaustion. And here, you don't have to be married a long time. Then you hear, well, you lose a job, or if something turns on here. And, sometimes, boy, we got a new job. I got a lot of money. It's, the harvest is coming in. It's great. And the next thing you know, you lose it. And now you're in a famine. And now you're learning there through these times, the man, to trust God, where you came from, who created you. And now you don't learn in the harvest. You don't learn in the feast. You don't learn in the, that's when things are going great. It's through now you're going to have highs and lows and inconsistencies, but you are going to learn to trust me through the inconsistencies of the submission to a world that is inconsistent. And find my consistency. That's how you'll grow. And then he turns to the woman, and you will submit to that from whence you came. Woman means out of man. You came out of man. And so you are going to learn to trust me as you submit to him in his times, his seasons, his feasts, his famines, his highs, his lows, his humanness. And that's how we grow so often in a marriage, with all of these things that God lets us go through. Therefore, when you've got, even in the process of going through it, that there's a man that has found his strength and his hope and his joy and his peace and his gratitude there in the Lord, and now he's bringing that in. Honey, I don't know what we're doing right now, but God does. I don't know where the next meal is going to come from, but God does. I don't know how I'm going to find another field to plow or something else, but God does. And there's that hope and that strength that he's there, but that I've just got to trust him. And I'm asking you to trust me through this time that we're going through, that we have to deal with. And so here, when we learn that, it's interesting. The father of all faith for us, Abraham. He's the father of the whole Judeo-Christian world. And here, we look at a very wealthy man. He's exceedingly wealthy, the Bible says, in gold and in silver, and in many flocks. But he was a man that he felt God called him. Since God called him to another life, another world, he'd never been there before. He was willing to walk away from all of this in search of what God had for him. And he does precisely that. I'm sure you know the story. And here, when Abraham heads off, to go there, by Hebrews said he went out not knowing where he was going. God is now teaching him to depend upon him, not on all of his resources, not on all that he had. Don't worry about that. I will take care of you. I'm going to give you there, look, north, south, east, and west. You trust me, you follow me, I'll give it to you. And don't ever worry about any of the struggles in life. Whoever blesses you, I'll bless him. Anybody curses you, I'll curse him. I will stand with you. I'll take care of you. I'm going to provide for you. By the way, Abraham, how many kids you got? We don't have any. Don't worry about that. Look to the stars of the sky and the sands of the sea. You trust me, so shall thy seed be. And here is now that somehow or another I've got to follow him. I don't know where I'm going. He hasn't told me. He's just told me to go. And he's telling me to venture out. And so many times, just like Abraham, I think we find ourselves going there. And the Bible tells us, how many of you know when Abraham arrived in the promised land, what he found? A famine. Abraham gets there in submission, in trust, in obedience, and there's a famine in the land. And there, instead of really, okay, I took a step of faith, I trusted him, we're venturing out, now all of a sudden God gives him a jam, gives him there a famine. And he did what a lot of men do. He falls back on his own resources, his own thinking. Well, I do have money. We can't, I'm very wealthy, but I also got all these people to feed, this whole entourage there. He's got 318 military servants, defenders. I mean, this guy was, could you imagine having, plus the domestic help and all of this. They actually think when Abraham went, he had about 2,500 mouths to feed that he took with him. Every wives, children, families there. I mean, this man was incredibly wealthy. But now he gets into this land, and there's a famine in the land, and what does he do? He falls back on himself. Instead of there praying and saying, okay, God, it was probably, well, thanks, wow. I obeyed you, I followed you, I trusted you, I ventured out, and this is what I get for it, a famine. And here as he gets there, but don't worry, I'll help God out. I'll help him out. Obviously, he wasn't ready or something went wrong here with him, but he chose the right guy because I've got the resources. We'll go down to Egypt, we'll trade, we'll buy, sell, get whatever we want to help God through this famine so we can get back on track. So that easy that we can do that. When we're in a jam, okay, what do we got to do? Sitting up night and, rob Peter, sell Paul, buy, whatever else we got to do here is transfer, and God just lets us there with our own resources. Just like Abraham, you remember the story. He's on his way down to Egypt. He looks at Sarah, a very beautiful woman, realizes we could have a problem down there. So he probably, hey, Sarah, you look really pretty today. Well, thank you. You haven't said that in a while. Well, it's a problem today. Why? Because we're going to get down there, and with the trade we're going to be doing is probably a lot. Likelihood we'll meet Pharaoh. Maybe, maybe not. But these pharaohs, they think they're gods. If they see something that they want, they just take it. If it's a woman, they take her and just take her. If she's married, bye-bye husband. And so, but he says there, if we do meet him, I just want you to know I'm way ahead of this. I'm thinking it through, honey. I'm really smart. But just in case we do meet him, and just in case he does take a liking to you, I will just say that you are my sister, that it may be well for thee. And me, mostly me. But anyway, so I mean, he's there just, but don't worry, I got it all under control. Well, God, he has this way. When the guy's there, I'm in the cars, I'm leading, I'm doing it, and okay, let's see how you do, buddy. Let's go with your plan. So sure enough, they get down there. Pharaoh does meet him. Pharaoh does see Sarah. He's interested in her. And he's this boss. She is beautiful. And he wants her. And so here, Abraham, well, it's my sister. And Pharaoh says, hey, you're a smart man. I'm a smart man too. We got two really smart guys here. You came down here to do a lot of trade. You need a lot of stuff, to get your stuff. You need a lot of animals. You need a lot of other things. Look, here's what I'll do. I got boatloads of it. I got tons of it. You can have whatever you want. I'll just give it to you. And I'll take your sister in trade to me. What do you say, bro? And Abraham, like a deer in headlights, he says, okay. And here, I mean, you can imagine Sarah looking at her wonderful buccaneer husband who ventured off into the world, and now all of a sudden she just got traded, for some donkeys and stuff, and she's there looking at this. And then the Bible tells us when Pharaoh is about to take her, God says, you can't have her. What do you mean I can't have her? I paid a lot of money for this woman. It's in the Hebrew. But anyway, just trust me. And God told him, don't worry about it. They're all expensive. You'll never get away from it. No, that's not there. But at any rate, it is true. But the thing is that here, he says, you can't have her. Why can't I have her? It's that man's wife. He told me it was his sister. I know, the guy's got a lion problem. I got to work on that. You can rebuke him, give him back, and send her home. You can imagine what the trip home was like. But at any rate, a lot of silence, a lot of struggle, a lot of things that are going on between the two of them. As God is testing them. God is letting them go through some incredible times. There were now, he's working with her, and amazingly, in the New Testament, Peter suggests that one of the things that really got him through here was Sarah's submission to her husband. At this time in their life, what an incredible thing. But here, when we realize this is the journey we're on, this is why we're here. The marriage is one of the biggest utensils or tools that God uses, like sandpaper, to get us down to need him more and more. Many people think that they're really wonderful Christians, and they love people, and life is easy, and life is wonderful, until they get married. Then they find out, it's like sandpaper, they're rubbing each other in their shirts, the other people. I was a wonderful person until I met you, or something, and we think it was them. And it's their fault that I'm not happy or whatever else. No. God looks there and he says, I'm putting you into closer proximity to another human soul so you find out more about your own soul. More reveals more about your own, where you're getting your joy, where you're getting what makes you thankful, where it makes you work so well with people. Because now there's a deeper sense of all this where now we're testing it. Now we're seeing how great it is. And so these issues and these roles that we have, and now with the wife submitting to her husband, has nothing to do with intelligence, has nothing to do with competence or abilities there. And in fact, the interesting thing to me that I've learned is I think many, many women, mostly, they're better leaders than men. They're better organizers than we are. They get the house, they get the kids, they get everything, all figured out really pretty easily, pretty well. Well, we don't figure that out as well. If you ever, like you look here at this conference, I can just walk in here and I can tell you men had nothing to do with it. I mean, you look here, you got the tablecloths, you got little flowers, everything matches. You got all the wonderful little printing thing here, out there. And the women did this. It's insane and it's wrong and it's terrible. No, I'm just kidding. But they are good at this. They see stuff where a man's conference, it's basically, hey, all they want just bring a bedroll and we'll eat meat, something, and that's it. They don't care. They don't organize. And women, many, many times, are far more competent, and yet God takes the one that is more competent, and he says, now you submit to the incompetent guy. The guy that doesn't see the. My wife, she sees it when we'd be out on a vacation or someplace and going got the kids and about 3 boys in the back, and they're fighting and shoving and going back and forth. And with the kids, they always wanted to get the seat farthest. That's how I was when I grew up. For me, because I put my foot on there and hey, settle down, you guys, stop it, quit fighting, and things. We keep driving. And Jean would say, honey, they're just hungry. They just need food. It'll be fine if you just give them some food. I'm not going to reward behavior like that with food. No, you don't do that. You whap it, or something into submission, or something there. But women see these things. And this is how God works in a sense there. Where now he says to her, submit to him. Submit to him. And this, I'm working in ways that you don't see and you don't understand in both of your lives. And And it's interesting because what happened with me is Jean grew up in a wonderful Christian home, truly wonderful. Never had a desire at all for a moment to rebel from it. They had devotions and in the Word every night. Her parents, they were in the mid-40s when she was born. She has 2 significantly older brothers than her. But then they had really worked out so much in their life, in their marriage or whatever else, they're settled in the Word, love the Lord, praying. And Jean just grew up in a wonderful thing. They put her in private Christian schools. There were great Bible studies and things. They had a home in a place called Mount Hermon, a Christian conference center. She would work there in the summers, either working the popcorn machine or helping make beds or whatever else as a volunteer thing there and listen to all these speakers. And, at high school, wonderful little Christian high school, Billy Graham's daughters were her sweet mates. And while they're all missionary kids of, ministry, there's only like 100 kids in the thing, but just a godly environment, wonderful place. And she had a depth. I'm a new Christian. I got saved about a year before. I meet her kind of. And here in this, she had far, far more understanding. I just fell in love with her. I got to have this woman, thing. And so I snagged her. But then after she agrees to this, and now we're in it, and now you're getting close. Next thing you know, I'm intimidated. Very intimidated because now we would go out on dates. She would tell me Bible stories of people that I had no idea were even in the Bible. I never heard of them. That's in the Bible. Wow, that's amazing. And story after story. She just knew them all and knew the word so well. And then I realized, I think God may be calling me into ministry. And I was intimidated. I will never be as good as my wife. I will never know the word like that. I will never catch up. And it kind of hits me because I'm supposed to be the leader of this. And I have no idea really how to do it. Right during that time that I'm going through this struggle internally, at the time I worked for a place called Bank AmeriCard. If you're older, you may remember that. It was kind of one of the first cards like this. There was a fellow named R.C. Kohler, worked for the Bank of America, who came out with this whole thing. And basically, he'd gone out to all the, where basically before these things, you had a credit card for everything. You had a Shell gas station card, you had a Mobile Star card, you had a Standard Oil. For all the, you had one for the department stores. Every department store, everybody had their own credit cards, their own credit divisions, their own everything. And they usually lost money on it because credit checks, authorization for things, the bad credit departments, the data processing, the mailing, the whole thing, they lost. This guy goes out and he gets here, he said, all the department stores, the gas stations, any place out there, he says, I'm going to create a card that we will do it. We will do everything. We will check everybody's credit. They will answer to us. We will give them a card. If they don't pay, you get your money no matter what. And with this thing, but you don't have to pay to do all of this stuff. You're just going to give us a little percentage of everything, and that's where we'll make our money. And then you will actually make money now too. And it took off. Many of you now just have one card, or that you can do everything with. He was kind of the father of that in many ways. But here, so I worked for the Bank of America card division of Bank of America. This guy, then Kohler resigns, and a new guy comes in from the Spring Street, which was the biggest Bank of America in Los Angeles. He then is brought in, now to take over vice president of Bank of America card. And when he came, it was a 7-story building. When he came in, he'd never been in the building, obviously, and he had never worked with Bank of America card. He just did regular traditional banking, home loans, and all the other things that they did at the time. And he walks into this entirely new world. And, that now he's given the job. And it was interesting, a long story short, I ended up there. I was just part-time going to college in business, but I ended up, he had his office was situated here kind of. Right out of the door was his secretary, Mary. I was given a thing here because he wanted if somebody wrote the president of, some big wealthy guy, he wanted a personal letter. He had a problem with something, and he didn't solve them. He just wanted somebody to run around, write, go check what the problem is, write a letter for me, on the thing to get it reconciled or get this guy happy. We'll put it on my letterhead and I'll sign the thing. And so that's your job. So I was just a lowly guy doing this work, but I'm right there watching the middle of this as this new guy comes in. Meantime, as he comes in, I'd be sitting there, and here's this this is the floor, this is customer service out there, and all these people answered phones and customer service. Data processing is down a floor, authorization is up another floor. I mean, all these different floors for different departments for Bank of America. This guy comes in, and he doesn't know anything. Well, somebody needs an answer or something. They come to me, to Mary, because Mary was there at the very beginning. Mary was there working for Kohler when he's putting this thing together. When this whole mind, she understood better than anybody. She thoroughly knew it. And she could have run the whole thing easily. But at any rate, next thing you know, now this guy's there. He doesn't know anything. People would come, hey, Mary, she'd ask, they'd heard the question. I'd sit there and watch, and and she'd give him the answer. Oh, go do this, 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 and this. And then she would do things like, hey, how's the new guy? And she said, the guy doesn't know up from down. He got in the elevator this morning, to go to data processing, and he went up, which everybody knew data processing was down. It was her way of saying he doesn't know what he's doing. And you're watching this, and she gave right answers. She wasn't messing with people. But this new guy, he's seeing this. He's aware something's not right. He's aware that something's going on. He lets it go for a little while, and one day, his door opens, and he says, Mary, would you come in here? Mary gets up, she goes into his office. A few minutes later, she comes scurrying out, goes over to the desk, pulls out her purse, gets some Kleenex, and something's hit her. And off she goes, gets in the elevator, she's gone. Well, I'm sitting there wondering what that is, and he comes walking out, stands right at my desk, puts his hand on my desk, leaning out, looking over, customer service. I say to him, I said, well, I'm a guy, even if there's nothing to say, I'll say it anyway. But anyway, I said, how's everything? He said, well, I'll tell you tomorrow. I said, well, what's happening tomorrow? He said, I had to have a little talk with Mary. I don't know how it went. He said, I told her that Kohler is gone, and the bank hired me to be vice president of Bank of America, not her. And I think she thinks they should have hired her because she knows everything here. and everybody knows she knows everything. And in that, though, she needs to come to the decision whether or not this is my job, not her job. And so I told her, I said, you know, there's absolutely nobody that could be a better helper to me in all the banking than you. But if you think that you are here to run it, that's not your job. So I want you to take the rest of the day off, and you go think about that. And if you feel like you can be my secretary and help me, nobody could help me more. But if you can't, then we have to make other plans. And so he said, so we'll know tomorrow. I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden, it's like, I got it. You know, I know why I'm struggling, why I'm intimidated. I could hardly wait for him to leave. I called Jean. And I get her on, I said, you know this thing that he's going through with Mary, you know, this blah, blah, back and forth, and she's kind of running, and there's some tension building, I can see this thing. And he came out, and he kind of had to talk with her, send her home, and decide whether or not she wants to be a secretary, she thinks she'll run it. She says, yeah, well, you know I'm intimidated by you. You know, hold on a minute. I'll never catch up with you. Yes, what do you, so? And I said, here's the deal. And I said to her, do you want to be my secretary? Nobody could help me pull off ministry better than you, you know, with it. And she said, yeah, you idiot, fine. And she didn't say it. She might have thought that, but that was, it gave clarity to me. I realized that God was putting me into a role that somebody else could be an unbelievable helpmate for, but not the leader of. But the test of it had to be kind of with her, could she take that role? And and that's tough for a woman. Tough for anybody, I suppose. Many years ago, back in 1970, when I came on staff, or 71, with Calvary Chapel, and with Chuck Smith, there was a little Bible study, a little teeny thing that Jean would go to. And they would have homework, and they'd have different things that they had to do, you know, is come back and work on this study and answer these questions or whatever they did, whatever that was, I don't know. But one time she's talking, she said, we got some homework, and I'm supposed to ask you some questions. And I'm just supposed to write down what you said and not discuss it with you. I just am supposed to ask you your answer. So she asked me something, I answer her, and she writes down whatever it was, and then she asked another, it's like 4 or 5 questions. And then she gets to the next question. She says, am I submissive to you? Was the question. And I said, no. And she said, come on, I got to do my homework. I got it done. Come on, just answer the question. And I said, I'm sorry, ask it again. What was the question? She said, am I submissive to you? I said, no. And she said, what do you mean? What do you mean? And then I said, well, you're not supposed to ask questions. You told me yourself, right at the beginning here, just write down the answer and what I say and move on. Well, we weren't going to move on. She said, no. And then she said, wait. And she says, didn't you, when you wanted to move over here, and then when you wanted to sell everything over there and go to England and spend everything we had, and didn't I do that? And then we come back from England, and then you're going to go over here to seminary, but I just do here, and then you want to leave and go do this. And she goes, I didn't know it, but you women, you keep a list of your submissions. You remember she's going down this incredible list of submissions there that she didn't, proving her submission. And I said, well, sorry. What was the question again? She said, am I submissive to you? And I said, no. And she said, why would you say that? I said, is the question, am I obedient or am I submissive? They're different questions. You're obedient. But at the same time, I always have the feeling with you that when I do something, or I say, this is it, you on one hand, you're obedient because you're a Christian and you know you're supposed to be that, and you want to do that role, but at the same time, you're obedient, but in your heart, you're not submissive. I can ask you to sit down, and you will sit down, but you're still standing up inside. And she said, how did you know that? It was so funny. I didn't know if I knew it, but I thought it. But anyway, I was right. But on how so often? That's not as unto the Lord. That's just because we know you women, you go to ladies' Bible studies and it's beating, hey, you got to submit to your husband, and I got to go, oh, okay, we're going to pray for you. We go submit to him. And so you go home and you're obedient. But is it something there? Because there's a huge difference in the two. One of them there is you're waiting and you're letting God deal with him by your submission. It's like he's calling a play. You're out there on the field, and he's a quarterback, and he says, all right, we're going to do an end around. And he says, it won't work. We did that before. It won't work. And he says, well, I want to do it. And so, well, you get an argument in the huddle, or you say, all right. And something there, we're all right. I'm going to run that play as if I ordered it myself. I'm going to give everything I have to have that play possibly work. I'm not going to sit back and watch the whole thing, not do my job, and say, see, it didn't work. Rather than that, he's got to learn his position. He's got to learn his role. I've got to learn mine. And they're both hard roles because there's an attitude to it. There's a matter of the heart. It's not the external, behavior that happens. It's the internal working in the heart, in the soul that's going on. I heard a story once, many years ago, of a guy. He'd been in the military, in Vietnamese War, and he was over there, and he was in an area where their big base was, and if they wanted, they could actually live off of the base and just go back and forth. And right outside the base, about 3 or 4 of these guys got together, and they rented a little house there, and they hired a little Vietnamese houseboy to come in and do all the chores, cook meals, clean things up, and wash clothes and whatever else, to do all these things. And so here is they kind of got this thing going, but there's no TV, there's no games, there's nothing to do. They end up kind of bored. And so one time, out of just entertaining themselves, they went and the Vietnamese houseboy comes, and one day, he just shows up. Well, one of them goes out, and he had on these little flip-flops that he would leave out on the steps coming in. And so just out of boredom, or just see what happens, he goes and gets some nails, and he nails down his little flip-flops onto the step. And then they wait, he goes and does his job, do everything around, and they're kind of waiting for him to leave. And they're looking out the window to see how it is. And he goes out, and he realizes can't get his flip-flops on. He looks around, realizes that they've been nailed down. He comes into the house, gets a hammer, plies the nails off, puts the nails away, puts the hammer away, goes out and puts his flip-flops on and goes home. Well, that didn't do anything, not a word, nothing, and not entertaining. So the next thing you know, shows up the next day or something, they take Vaseline, and this is when the door handles were round, before the other handle type of. They put Vaseline on the door handle, so he's going around and he goes to turn, and then checking out Vaseline. He goes and gets a bunch of soap and water, washes all the Vaseline off, cleans it off, does it then, and goes on about his work without a word. And they're just, this is not fun. So then they get radical. They actually go and they hook up a bucket with flour and water in it. They have put it over the door that when you open the door, and the flour and the water poured down on it. They rigged it up. They were awfully bored, I guess. But anyway, so sure enough, he comes to work, opens the door, flour and water comes down. He stands there for a moment, looks around, sees all this, without a word. He goes and cleans it all up, puts everything away, and then goes and does his work. And then over there talking, say, this kid's going to quit. He's not going to come back. He's a great kid. So they just said, we got to talk to him. Before he leaves, they sit him down, and they said, look, we're sorry. We've been messing with you, and forgive us. We should not have been doing this to you, and please don't quit. You got to be irritated or upset, but please, we won't do it anymore. And so he says, okay. He says, so you no more naily shoes to the floor. Nope, no more naily shoes to the floor. You no more put Vaseline on door handle. Nope, no more Vaseline on door. You no more bucket of water flour. No more bucket of water flour. He says, okay. Then me no more spitty in the soup. And, and I think a lot of women, they're doing technically everything and trying to do it right and going through it, but you can be spitting in the soup the whole time you're doing it. You can be something there within you that rather than whatever it is that's going on, I've got to work my way through this. You see, because there's a heart to it. It's not a behavior. It's a heart that's what God's doing in a marriage. He's taking two people and he's blending them together. He's making them one. He's starting to mesh their hearts and their lives and their commitment and their surrender and their submission and their joys and their sorrows and their feasts and their famines. Through all of these things, he's blending them and he's making them, be able to do this. And here it's something there, and he says that you do this, and it says in everything. Now, there are limits biblically that you don't, and if you think that's an issue, then you go to pastor and talk to them about it. But you basically, sometimes maybe you're asked to do something, you don't agree with it, and you don't think it's right. This is where you're giving your husband the opportunity to succeed or fail. You're giving him the leeway to learn whatever he may have to do, and he says, wife, you let him do this. Whatever he has to learn, he's got to learn it from me. And I think the problem is a lot of wives, they can challenge almost every decision their husband makes. They look there and you shouldn't do this, is a mistake. Now, I'm not saying we don't talk and we don't converse, but something there that you're in the huddle and you may, well, I think the end around won't work, but you're the quarterback. You call that play, I'm giving it everything I got. I'm giving it everything I've got. That play is not going to fail because I did not do everything I could to make it succeed. And submission isn't tested when you're doing when he's doing what you would do anyway. Well, I agree with that. So you submit to it. No, you're not submitting to it. You're just doing what you already think. Submission is tested when it isn't something that you would do. And, and how it is, if you could imagine yourself, you're going someplace and you're walking down a path. And as you come along the path, there's little signs there. And then where you're going is, it's over here in the distance. And, the man, he kind of sees the distance. All right. Well, a woman, she sees the path. And she sees, okay, destination, and then it kind of meanders around, whatever, it goes over here. He's looking at it, well, I know a shortcut. I can see a shortcut. We can take the shortcut. Well, she said, but there's a path here. Now you got a problem. What are you going to do? And oh, by the way, one of the things as well that I don't think a lot of women know about men, and how different we are, in the sense that men actually have some things that women don't have. In a sense, they just don't have it. Never got it. Can't operate it in this realm. But men have an inbuilt GPS system. We don't need directions. We just know. I know it's over there. Something. Just no. You don't. No. I just trust me. I know where I'm going. So you go there. We went by that same gas station twice. But you just leave me alone. I'm figuring it out. I know where. Well, why don't you do the map? I don't need a map. I know where I'm going. Why don't you stop and ask somebody? I don't need to stop and ask somebody. I know. And you don't understand that. In fact, when you actually talk to us, this frequency that we learn this stuff from, you interrupt it, and then we have more problems, with it. And you got to just simply say, all right, he's got to figure this out himself. Because the guy, we're there, and we say, I know the shortcut. And you say, but there's a path right here. It's so obvious. But it's longer. And so now the test. He steps off the path. He now goes walking down. There's a little dirt, a little dusty. Come on, let's get. And you stand there, and you got your little white lily shoes and your white little outfit and your little white umbrella. No, I'm not going out there dirt. It's dirty out there. I don't want to get my shoes dirty. Just come on, it's fine, and get a little dust and everything, and then next thing it's a little muddy, and and now it gets deeper and deeper, and you're sucking it, you're come on, it's just a little mud, or something, and next thing you know, she's there saying, I told you so, I told you it wouldn't work. When are you going to learn? And another thing I don't think a lot of women understand about men. And that is that if you force a man to defend a stupid decision, we always will. Because we're struggling. One thing, we know we are called to lead. And we're insecure enough and many times, particularly when we're young in marriage, we're insecure enough that we fear that if we let you say, do, and run stuff, we'll lose our role. And we have to protect that role at all costs. Because if I lose that, I'm going to be henpecked the rest of my life. And I'm not going to be henpecked. I'm going to do what, and so we will try to force it away through. We will look at you and say, that is not mud. That's not mud. We will reach down into it. We will take a handful of it and we'll put it in our mouth and say, it's fudge. Now, come on. We will somehow or another, we've got to make it work. But the thing is that what happens when a woman, to her husband, she can maybe say, well, I see the path here, but God's called you to lead. And so you want to go that way? We'll go that way. I'll tell you, then when a guy, now he's going, and now she's following him. Now he really realized she is following him. She's listening to him. And she's doing what he's asking. It's much easier now for him to turn there and say, you know something, honey? I think I saw a sign back there that said, a little pathway. What do you think? And she said, oh, I saw that too. Or something where where now your role is still there. And she's learning her role at the same time. And you see, realize in marriage, we're both doing things we've never had to do before. We've never led before, and you never submitted before. And now there's something there when we can find that way. Because let me tell you, in every marriage, you can always wipe a little mud off. Not a marriage in the world that hasn't wiped a lot of mud off over the years. Said, well, Ben, I wouldn't do that. We wouldn't do that. We did this, but I wouldn't do that. But you learned, and experience always, at least, even if it's bad experience, should turn into wisdom. Should be something when one of your kids one day says, well, what would you do? Say, well, I'll tell you what I did that I wouldn't do again. That's wisdom. Even the things where you failed and it didn't go right can turn around. And it's so much easier. I think that when God looks at a woman first, and I think the reason God deals with women first here is that women are influencers. Men are leaders. I know we live in a day and age that's argued a lot, but at the same time, no matter what you say, women play an influence in life way beyond what even they imagine. Men are leaders. They need each other. They desperately need each other for survival. And when they have each other, you look at Esther and her influence in the Bible. You look at Abigail and her influence upon David. You look at Sarah, when her influence upon Abraham, and how incredible it is. And oftentimes, there's the old adage that you've all heard. Behind every successful man is his dog, but a woman. I'm not going to go there. But anyway, but here, it is so true. And there is somebody, that role, you look there and you'll always see this. You'll see, when you see somebody that is there, you look right behind. And so often when you see somebody that's crashing and burning, and there's a Jezebel behind him. Her influence took him down, or her influence raised him up. And it's like the influencer is the most incredible position when somebody does it. There's a story I once heard, read actually. There's a fellow named Thomas Wheeler. He was the chief executive officer of Massachusetts Mutual Life Insurance Company. He tells this story on himself. So one time he had this beautiful new, I don't know what it was, luxury car. And he and his wife, they're driving down the road out in the hills somewhere, and he looks down and he realizes, oh no, I'm about out of gas. He's desperately looking for a gas station, and finally he sees a sign that way out, and you pull off this road, down that other road, a sign for a gas station. So he goes around there, and he gets this little two-pump gas station there. And this is back in the days where you washed your own windows. I mean, they washed your windows and checked your oil and did all this stuff. So he goes in and he pays him some money there to, and he goes out, getting the gas. And as he's getting the gas, this guy comes out, he's washing the windows and doing all this, but he notices this conversation. His wife there is talking quite with this guy. They're going back and forth and chatting away. And so he goes in, he finishes up, gets in the car, they're driving down the road back and on the way. And as they're going along, he turns to his wife and he says, well, that sounded like an interesting conversation you were having with that guy. And she said, it was. You and we were looking at each other and we realized we knew each other from somewhere. And then we realized we went to high school together. And he says, matter of fact, she said, we even went out on a date one time. And she said, and all of us, and we're just talking about all these old high school things. And so he's driving along, this big, beautiful CEO, Massachusetts Mutual Life Insurance, driving down the road. And he said he couldn't even believe it came out of his own mouth. But he says to her, he says, well, I bet you're glad you married me instead of him. And then he realized that was the stupidest thing. It's quiet. About a minute later, she says, well, I'll tell you the way I look at it. If I'd have married him, he'd be the CEO of Massachusetts Mutual, and you'd be pumping gas. I mean, that's a woman. She knows her roles. She knows that, and she realizes the power of it. And when somebody has a submissive wife, how wonderful it is. And well, we'll hold it there. I'm halfway done, but my time, I'm sure, is well done. So, but here, we pray, and then I'm supposed to give you a question and maybe another one. But as you two talk together, you're going to have a little conversation with each other. And I would like you, wife, to ask to your husband, am I submissive to you? And see what he says. And see, and let him, you don't argue, don't defend it, no answers. You don't just listen to him. Say, well, why do you say that or something? And if you want to hit him, wait till you have parking lot. That's what parking lots are for. Wait till you get off the property. But when you can just ask, say, and realize if I want, I'm here to learn. I don't want to just come into a thing like this and maybe not have something that can happen that'll help us. Lord, we thank you for your word and your desire to help us, strengthen us, blend us, make us one truly. Lord, we ask that you would just take this time and bless us and work in us and prepare us, Lord, for what the man is, what our role is as well. We ask it in Jesus' name. Amen. Is that? Go do it? I mean, turn to talk, ask the question. Oh, yes? Yeah, okay. Okay.